They have literally destroyed this house. It smells. You can't smell. Oh man, I wish you could smell this. It just has a dirty, nasty, gross odor to it. Hey, Andrew Cross here with Andrew Buys Homes. We're going to show you another one of our beautiful houses that we bought, I think about 4 years ago. If you remember the story of this wonderful house next door that we bought, and we were just having the absolute worst time with the neighbors over here. So this was the local trap house. This is where everybody went to do their drugs, and this is where everybody went to fix their bicycles. So his little side hustle, if you will, was bicycle repair. When we bought this house, I want to say there was 200, maybe 300 bicycle frames in this house. It was pretty crazy. We had the same problem that we had on the other one. They had actually stolen the power, ended up having to do the breaker box. I assumed I was going to have to do it. I was hoping I didn't have to, but fortunately on this one I just had to do the breaker box. All the lines in it were cast iron, so there was no point in stealing copper out of it. And also the guy was actually renting out the rest of the rooms. He didn't tell his roommates till the day that we were closing that he was selling this property. He was trying to get his kids back. He just lost custody of his kids. He couldn't have them here. Everybody was stealing from him. Terrible, terrible situation. They were stealing power, all the power from the neighbors. They were stealing power from the other people. I had never... When I bought a house, I literally had all the neighbors come over, shake my hand, pat me on the back, and give me a high five, got my telephone number, and they have been absolutely vigilant on keeping the guys and keeping people out of this. I never had to worry about it. The cops got called for me every time they broke into this property, and they did. They broke into it multiple times. They were, at the very end, we were at the title company, a whole bunch of drama back and forth, drugs. They had liens against the property. Imagine that. They don't pay their bills. We get in there. The water meter had a radiator hose, so they'd already lost water, so they actually had a radiator hose hooked to it with clamps. Had a bubble on it about this big. It was about to bust. So they had that. They were also stealing power. They got caught twice stealing power, so they ended up taking it all the way up to the city pole. And then somebody over there, yeah, if you look up there, you see where they had taken it loose. When I got here, I knew I was in trouble because when I looked up here, saw the power was here, I looked up there and the lines were off and they were taped up. From what the neighbor had told me is at 2 o'clock in the morning, he saw one of those spider monkeys up there and with the pole around, tweaking at 2 o'clock in the morning, trying to fry his butt, hooked the power back up with some 110 wire. And so anyway, they called him back into the police again. Every one of those, when you steal power like that, it's actually a felony. So anyway, yeah, they had actually stolen power like 4, 5, 6 times. So I knew, I was hoping I didn't have to put a new breaker box on, but I had a 99% chance I was going to have to. I overpaid for this house, even that. He wouldn't come down off of $12,000, $13,000, whatever it was. But I didn't care. I mean, literally, he's harassing my tenant next door. He's harassing the neighborhood. I gave him an extra $3,000 or $4,000, whatever it was. I think I was trying to get it for 6 or 8 there, and I ended up paying 12 for it. Didn't care. I was like, fine, you're out of here. That's what we're looking for. So, long story short, we get through this thing. Come on in, we'll take a look. So we came through this thing. We had to do a full rehab on it. Now, if you smell the smell in it, that's been the next step that we've worked through. So after we got this wonderful tenant in here, they stayed for a long time, gas wall heaters. They stayed for a long time. They were wonderful tenants. They moved out. The house was empty for about 30 to 60 days. James, actually, he's working back there in the back. James came through here and touched up the house. It actually took him about 3 hours to touch up this house and do a complete makeover, turnover on it. We didn't have to clean this house. They were so nice. I mean, this place was clean. You can't, the smell now, you can tell it's not good. Moved a wonderful vet in here after that. The guy was fantastic, clean. We had a little water sink issues. My maintenance guys came over here. We checked on it. James came and checked on it. He said everything was great. We sort of use our maintenance guys as our check on our tenants as well. So as our maintenance guys go out, they'll take some pictures, they'll look at the property and say, hey, there's 3 pit bulls in the backyard. So, we have to start trying, we have to address that. Or, hey, there's 5 extra people living in the house, or whatever happens. So came through here, I was like, hey, how's the house? It's like, perfect. The house is great. Beautiful house. Poor guy goes out of town. 5 years. He's my second tenant in this property. The first one stayed for 4 years in this property. Guy goes on vacation, goes and sees his grandkids for 2 weeks. comes back and they'd robbed him blind. He literally came in here and saw there's nothing in my house. He actually thought that we had moved him out. And we called him and said, no, we did not move you out of this property. We did not touch the property. We thought you were living there. He says, I was living here. I am living here. So he called the police, called in a report, come to find out that somebody had literally broken into his house. That front window there was broken out. We had to replace this whole window and jam and all that good jazz right here, as they had literally just kicked this window in. They changed the locks and switched the locks out, so when he came in, his keys wasn't working, but they had jammed the back door, so the back door didn't close at all. Came in here, I thought he was a little, sounded off to me. I mean, it sounded like he was just trying to get out of his lease, honestly. But we still took it into consideration. We said, well, you better call the police and get a police report. He filed a police report, which makes me think maybe, and then I had James actually come through here, and he was like, yeah, none of this stuff is his. None of this stuff is his. The middle bedroom was set up for, looks like a 2 or 3 year old. I mean, everything was set up and beautiful. Toys were in there. Everything was set up ready to go. We're looking around here. He was a vet. His kids live out of state. There's nothing, he didn't have kids. Had just a couple pot plants in one of the rooms. That was it. So anyway, we're like looking around here, trying to figure out what's going on, trying to figure out what's going on. Anyway, we end up boarding up the house. Tweaker later comes over here while we're trying to do it, tells us that we're trying to screw somebody. He has a lease. She kept screaming, he has a lease. I'll have to show that video. Crazy lady, and poor Brad's over here trying to board up the house. Like, we both boarded up. He was getting the last couple of things, and she said, you're stealing from that man. How dare you steal? He's trying to get his kids. Goes through this whole rant, and we're like, okay. So he calls. We got a couple of videos of her. It's pretty funny. Anyway, and so he's like, all right. Like, this just keeps getting more interesting. Anyway, 2 days later, DHS calls us and wants to verify the lease. We have his mug shot too. It's great. Oh, and he had a truck. His truck was gone, so he had a truck in the backyard. Anyway, so the lady comes over, and my property manager starts talking to her, having a conversation, blah, blah, blah. This is what's going on. And she goes, no, he is not living in that property. It's actually this other person that lives in that property. And she says, oh, well, he said that he lived here. And she goes, I drove by, and there's no trespassing signs, and all the windows are boarded up. So something's going on here. And so we get to talking to her, and he had gone out and found a lease, forged our information on it. So he went through, forged our name on the lease, had a lease in place, went and got the utilities turned over in his name. He was trying to get custody back of his kids. Evidently, he had just gotten out of jail. Long story short, he was the tenant that lived in the back of this house when the guy sold it. He had actually just gone to jail, and the neighbor down the street came over and was like, yeah, I know exactly who was over there. Told me his name, gave me all his information. He goes, the same guy? He's like, when I saw him over, he was like, oh no, don't tell me he moved that guy back in. He's like, as soon as he saw him get out of jail, he's like, well, here we go. Things are gonna start coming up missing. And 2 days later, he's like, mowers started coming up missing, things started getting stolen, problems started happening. Then he noticed that he moved in down the street, and he's like, oh no. In less than a week, they have literally destroyed this house. It smells. You can't smell. Oh man, I wish you could smell this. It just has a dirty, nasty, gross odor to it. It smells like smoke. There is spots in the carpet over here. I mean, look at this. This is like they had a chair sitting here. Just grunge beat into the carpet. This was not like this a week ago, or 3 weeks ago. So he was here for less than a week. From what I gather, it looks like he was here about 4 or 5 days. When I came over here the first day, I was like, this looks a little suspicious. When I came back the next day, this room was vacuumed, cleaned up, and ready to go. He had a house visit over here. Came over here, the DHS worker walked through the house, saw his brand new truck. He's driving the guy's truck. He fixed the guy's truck, said there was something wrong with it. He went and fixed the guy's truck, and so he could do a home health visit for the DHS. And I guess he was hoping that they weren't going to check.
Is this the same guy that you bought the house from?
It wasn't the same guy that I bought the house from. It was the guy that I bought. It was his roommate. It was lived in the back. So there was this back unit here. He had that whole back section there, and then he had the front section, and somebody else had this other bedroom. So you had 3 or 4, 5 people living in here. This room, when I bought it, was this full of bicycles. You couldn't even get in this thing, and it was the local, like all the drug heads, all the tweakers around here knew that if you need a bicycle fix, this is where you went. So after we bought this property for like 8 months, 5 months, the whole time we were working on this thing, like people would come up, hey, is Dono here? Can I fix my, be pushing a bike up. And you're like, nope, dude, he don't live here no more. Aw, man, you know where he went? Nope, don't know where he went. I mean, he had his gig here. I mean, people came over here all the time. all the time to get their bikes fixed. It was the guy who lived back here in this back bedroom that was actually the one that broke in. Anyway, you can see, I mean, we've got it cleaned up. You can see that, I mean, they took all my cabinet doors off. I don't know why they took the cabinet doors off, but they took all the cabinet doors off. All my uppers, I've got half the doors here. There's 4 upper cabinet doors that are just missing. Don't know what they did with them, but they took my cabinet doors off, replaced them, tore up the dishwasher. There's holes in this vinyl flooring now. Don't know what they were dragging or what they were doing here. It's just dirty. I guess they were making food here, splashed grease all over the place. Cabinets look a lot better than they are now, but man, this place was just grungy, just so grungy. This room was the kids' room, or they set up as the kids' room. This was totally full of toys. I mean, I know he's trying to get his kids back, but the DHS worker said that definitely isn't going to happen and probably won't happen again. On the bright side, normally when somebody breaks into one of our houses, we don't have any record of it, the cops don't do anything about it, and nothing we can do about it. This time, we have a sworn affidavit that he signed with a government employee saying that he lives here, he signed the lease. And then, not only that, the truck in the back was his, and we also have a police report against him, against this house, with the previous owner and with the previous owners and the previous tenant. I'm hoping maybe we can get him thrown back in jail. He was in there for 18 months on the last event. Hopefully we can lock him up and they don't let him back out, but we'll see what happens. Gas heat, gas stove, little downstairs room. When we got this thing, it was all like boarded off. This was his room. Just every little thing that you would imagine that could be stolen was stolen in here. Just tools and equipment and any little thing that you could steal out of somebody's truck, like 20 sets of jumper cables and extension cords and little things that they had tore apart, and the yard was full. Believe it or not, out of this house we took 3 40-yard dumpsters out of this and the yard is small. I mean, this is all the yard is. So this is your parking in the back. This is the yard and the alleyway. This is it. We cooked 3 deal out of here. I'll just step out here. And then this is the other bull crap. I don't know what happened or what they were doing or why they did this. They started a fire back here. Yeah, right here. Who started there? Started here. Gas is on. Electric's on. Water's on. Why would you start a fire in the back of the house, next to the house, the day before you're going to have DHS come over and do a health check. That's what it is. Good old Drunk Frog brought us over a dumpster. We filled that dumpster up. Somebody's already come over and taken half of the stuff out of it. So anyway, there's half a dumpster there if you guys want to fill it up. That's the wonderful story of this house. It has been a labor of love. I'm selling it. I'm putting it on the market right now. It's doubled in value since I bought it 5 years ago, and I'm going to go ahead and cash it out and go move over into, hopefully, maybe I can get another multiplex, or maybe I can get another bigger unit, or maybe just a $1,000 plus rental. So I'm just going to trade it up, just do a trade up. Monopoly, trade a house in for a hotel, you know? So that's what I'm looking at doing, except for in real estate, you can get a loan and you don't have to do 4 houses for one. You can just do 1 house and get a loan and get the other one. So yeah, that's what's going on here. That's all the fun stuff that's happened lately. I feel so sorry for the old man that was here, the gentleman that was here. I mean, literally, he just kept crying, like all his stuff was gone. He was a lifelong military guy, had his Purple Hearts are gone, had 2 Purple Heart. He had, that entire middle bedroom was basically a shrine to his life that he had set up in there. Really heartbreaking that his pins, his medals, his jackets, things he picked up on tour and all that, and just all of it was just gone. He just kept crying and it's just all gone, it's all gone, it's all gone. And we thought he was having a little bit of problems, but then when we came over here, we realized that he wasn't. He was having some serious problems. So his kids came and got him. He's now living with his children, and they were wanting him to move in with them anyway, so I guess it worked out for him in the long run, but it sucks that he literally lost his entire life. They took everything. Fortunately, he did have renter's insurance, and so I'm hoping to collect on his renter's insurance as well. That's another little tip there. You guys should always have your tenants get renter's insurance, because if they have a break-in, their baby mama drama, any of those things, you can collect against their insurance instead of against your insurance. So every time you collect against the insurance on one of your properties, every time your insurance rate's going to go up. If you do it too many times, they say they're not going to raise it, but they're going to raise your rent. Especially if you have 30, 40, 50, 60 houses, you start calling in hell claims, problems, things like that, they're going to start raising your rates all the way across the board. So for me, I pay an astronomical amount of money per month in insurance. If I raise the insurance up to like full replacement cost and all that, I would spend another probably $40,000 to $50,000 a year in just insurance costs. So for me, it makes more sense. So I'm basically self-insured. It covers, I have enough insurance to cover the loan. If this thing burnt down, my bankers would be happy. I wouldn't. So I would still come out of, I wouldn't come out of pocket, but I would probably have to come out of pocket to like bulldoze it and sell a lot. But I keep those expenses down because I figure for about another $40,000, $30,000 a year, I could probably go ahead and like buy a house instead of having to worry about fixing a house. If all my houses got hit at one time, I'd be in trouble, but we keep them so spread out, the likelihood of that happening is very low. Little tip there, have all your tenants get renter's insurance, especially if they have bigger dogs, because then all that dog bite stuff and all that stuff is taken care of by your renters. If they get kicked in, have a problem like this, it'll cover it. If your tenants have a grease fire, their stuff will cover it. Also remember that all your tenants' belongings inside of your dwelling, when you have a insurance policy, which is a landlord policy, it covers none, zero of the inside of all your tenants' belongings. So you make sure that before they move in, if you don't require renter's insurance, you tell them, if this house burns down, you're out of luck. Most tenants, doesn't matter, they don't have a lot of stuff. Some people do. For $12.50, I use Buildium, I think for about $12 to $13 a month, it adds it to the bill automatically, and it covers up to $30,000 or something like that. I forget what the exact numbers are, but it seems like it was about $30,000. Let's face it, $30,000 will replace all of my tenants' belongings 2 or 3 times over and the damage done. So I'm hoping, praying that I can go ahead and collect on the renter's insurance on this one. We're hoping that he can get his insurance taken care of, and at least, even though he's going to lose all his belongings, maybe he'll get at least a paycheck out of it. So we'll see. Time will tell. Insurance is insurance, and we're still fighting with them a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be much of a fight. So anyway, don't have time to wait for them either, so that's why we're fixing this thing up and going to get it on the market as quick as possible. Right now, we got it boarded up. I'm going to try and get the boards off of it maybe tomorrow, next day, finish getting the rest of the trash out of here, and then vacuum. I need to have these floors shampooed because that place stinks.